Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Future Contracts. Today, I have the pleasure to be speaking to Terra Potter. Terra, welcome.
Thank you. And thank you for inviting me to join you. It's very exciting.
Great to have you here. Tell us a bit about yourself.
I am, let me think, I'm a almost 20 years PQE lawyer. I'm getting there between 15 to 20. I'm originally from a cornfield outside Chicago, but I'm actually an English qualified lawyer. I've been in-house now since 2012, and I've been in all sorts of industries from oil and gas to energy to aerospace, space and defense, automotive. Now I'm doing working with this great social impact consultancy company. So I've been a bit all over the shop from a legal perspective.
Amazing. And so it's great that you've been, around for 20 years in the industry. What's changed over the last 20 years, would you say?
The speed at which a response is expected. I think availability, right? Like how quickly are you expected to respond and engage? And I think that's the first thing that's really changed. The second thing is I think a lot more is expected of individual lawyers at much lower levels than it used to be. When I first started in 2006, you did one thing, you learned it, you moved on. And I feel like the expectation now is that every lawyer everywhere knows everything, which is to me a little bit scary. A little bit
Mm.
scary.
When you say
Yeah.
the expectation, do you mean the expectation from other lawyers or the expectation from the business in an in-house environment?
So client side. So I don't think it's just from when you're in-house. I think, for instance, there's an expectation if you are engaging with a law firm that they'll be able to do everything that you want. I think, also very much in-house. If you're working in an in-house team, there's an expectation, you can advise on everything from, you know, uh, sanctions to tax law to, basic NDAs. So there is an expectation that lawyers can basically be jacks of all trade at this point.
Is that good as in like it pushes us more, or is it bad in that it creates undue pressure to the detriment of people's job satisfaction?
Okay. So that's gonna be more complex. I think it's good because it pushes you to keep learning. I think it's good because it pushes you to really understand what your client and internal or external client wants and needs. I think it's bad if you're unwilling to push back, right? If you're unwilling as a lawyer to turn around and say, actually, this is not my area of expertise. I'm sorry, I can't advise you on the tax laws in Mozambique, something like that, right? If you're not comfortable pushing back, which, to be fair, a lot of junior lawyers aren't necessarily comfortable doing that, then I think it does become harder, especially at the junior end of the scale. I think it becomes a lot more challenging to feel as though you have grounding and expertise if what's expected of you is sort of like a shifting sand.
Yeah, totally. The topic of today's podcast was, and as I said before we started recording, it's subject to
Oh,
change because these conversations are meant to be natural. And if
yeah.
the course takes us a different way, then that's totally fine. But what you and I discussed in the prep call for this podcast was the difficulties and complexities of training lawyers in the age of AI. And considering you've been doing this 20 years and you've seen the changes, and now with AI coming to the fore and becoming a real kind of intrinsic part of how lawyers work, um, how do you think that's going to change the way that lawyers operate even further?
I think it's going to shift everything. I think the fundamentals, right? Legal fundamentals are going to stay the same. It's how we engage with the law, how we engage with reviewing issues, reviewing documents, giving advice. And perhaps we need to I was reflecting on it obviously before we jumped on here. But the only parallel I can think of is when, like, not that long ago, 30, 40 years ago, it was a case where a client had an issue. They sent a letter to their lawyers, or perhaps they rang them, but they sent a letter. It came to the lawyers. They agreed to take the case on. A file was sent to them in the post, right? This big file was sent. People went through it. They, processed the information. They came up with the initial advice. A letter was sent back. All of that is being done instantaneously now. And when you think about the infrastructure that was required to support that sort of original structure, right? If you think about, the typing pools, if you think about the secretarial support, the admin support, the junior lawyers who would sit around, sit in the same office as a partner, who would do the first iteration of letters, it's all being done at the exact same time now. So everything is really compressed. And then we have the AI added in. So we need to figure out how to take all of that really organic, holistic learning and bring it into AI. Lots of lawyers, especially, even if you talk to me, I sort of go, I learned how to do a contract, right? Because I've reviewed thousands. And there is this glory to the grind, right? You talk to any partner, whatever, they're like, oh, I put in the hours. I did, 3,000 hours my first year and every year after. And I've reviewed thousands of contracts. Well, that's great. And that's how they learn, right? And that's how you learn. That's how we gain the expertise that we have. That's not a luxury that junior lawyers get these days. So we talk about it like it's something that they're somehow doing wrong, but that's not the system now. And I don't know what the system is going to be. But it's got to shift, right? It's got to be a wholly different shift. I think starting with law schools and starting with the training piece and starting really from the very beginning, because this tech will exist. It will actually, I think, end up taking over what a lot of what we do from a contractual perspective in a great way once we learn to work with it. But that training piece is something I think that the whole profession really needs to engage on, because we're just sort of going, we'll figure it out. Sorry, these guys aren't going to have the same thing we will, right? It doesn't cut it.
It doesn't cut it. I think the way that we learned was to do the job, right? We learned on the job as well. Like when I went into my first job, I'd never reviewed a contract in law school. Didn't even know what it looked like, really. I didn't understand the structure of a contract. And then I was thrown contracts to review as part of my first role. And I thought, this is unfair. How am I meant to deliver? And you when you come out of law school and you're young, you've got all this ambition and you want to prove yourself, and you just can't. You've got to learn by making mistakes. And then things that I'm advocating for now are the change that lawyers are going to see in the profession and how they need to start becoming architects of systems rather than doing the job that you've always done. It's not just executing, it's architecting, it's designing the system that's going to do it at scale. The way that you review a contract now is through maybe a mental playbook that you have in your head. But that mental playbook exists because you've been doing it for 20 years. And when you review an indemnity that's one-sided, you instantly know that that's not right for the agreement in question, and you can quickly redline it to make the changes. But those instincts that you've developed, how are junior lawyers going to develop that in the new world? And I don't expect that you have the answer, but this is just a question that
I would be so rich if I had the answer, bro. I'd have so much money. I'd be like, by the way, this is the answer. I'll sell it to the whole legal profession. Little bit, 1,000 students. No, I think the tools have to take us bit by bit. All right, so hear me out. Throwing it out there. Okay, right now there are incredible tools out there that exist. They can take a contract, redline it. It's perfect. And it can be done. And I do think we are going to work to a point where we'll develop our playbook, the other side will develop theirs, and our AIs will talk to each other. And then, but we can come on to that. I think we actually need an incremental approach. So I think we need to slow things down within the AI. Still use the AI, but for instance, with training, say that you are that trainee who's come in and has joined. And what if instead of just going, here's your answer, what if you had to go through it bit by bit? So say you have the AI and you say, I want to have a balanced indemnity, walk me through it. So it slows it down. It makes it more expensive and slower, but you'll get that training in there. So you'll essentially have the red line presented and say, the AI would essentially say, I suggest doing this for these reasons. And this is what is industry standard. So it's basically training as you go. It's also how I think about it. Like I have to do that now. Say that I'm doing a contract I'm not incredibly familiar with, or it's a brand new structure, or it's a jurisdiction I'm not comfortable with. I would go, yes, to experts, but I would also absolutely delve into AI and be like, hey, this is what I think from an English law perspective. What is it under, what is it under the laws of India? what is it under, Singaporean law or the laws of Switzerland, something like that. And then I would learn from that. So I would apply it in the future, but it would also show me essentially. So maybe something like that. I'm not sure, but something that basically slows it down, I think, rather than giving an answer teaches.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just from a very capitalist point of view, businesses going, unless they're law firms that want to train people up and have a vested interest because the lawyers are the product, in an in house scenario, a business is going to want to invest in that. Are they going to want to? I mean, they should maybe, but will they want to invest in that, or are they going to want just really fast contracts? Because I think there's a conflict there. We're going to slow it down. It's going to be more expensive, but we'll get lawyers that have a true understanding as to why something is being done in a contract. Versus the AI knows because a senior lawyer designed the system, and the junior lawyer is just there to ensure that the AI is doing it
Yeah.
right, or they're overseeing, or they're escalating if something doesn't seem right.
I think that's completely fair. I think it depends on the business. Ultimately, though, you will need junior lawyers, senior lawyers, any lawyer. You will need all of those lawyers to be able to argue the point, because you will always, almost inevitably, get to a point where your AI, whatever is being suggested, doesn't agree with the other side. So you'll have to jump on the phone, send emails, put in comments that actually argue your point yourself. So at some point, this junior lawyer who may not, who has AI doing it for him, is going to have to jump on the phone and back up their argument and their suggested changes. And if they can't do it because they don't know, then they're not going to convince anybody of that. Also, there's a risk translation point, right? So when you're in house, it's not about the contract necessarily, because I can agree to anything. Right? We can shove things into the contract that are wholly commercial and terrible from a long-term perspective. We can put things in there like getting rid of all of our intellectual property or whatever, just to get a contract done. Unless the lawyer can translate what the risk is to the business, then there's no point. So you can have a lawyer who's turning around and saying, we can't do this and I'll make the sky fall. But if the business doesn't actually appreciate the risk because it hasn't been explained to them by the lawyer, because who else is going to do it, then they'll just push for it to be done. So a big part is also that risk translation point. So it's not just the contract, it is explaining it internally, it's selling it internally, it's negotiating it, it is making sure your systems are set up for how your company is run and the culture of it, and making sure that AI and those systems and those contract processes actually are fit for the people, the culture, the risk appetite, what you're actually delivering on. So I think you still need to have a nuanced understanding of contracts. And so that's why you're going to want to slow it down, because also you don't want to start problems. You don't want to have a junior lawyer who's going, yes, 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 to whatever the AI suggests, what actually doesn't make any sense. If them saying yes is going to slow down the contract because it's a bit silly for, the scope of work, for the product you're doing, for this specific client, something like that, there will still be judgment has to go into it. So that judgment has to develop somehow, right?
Yes, maybe that's the answer. Maybe the answer is, instead of focusing the training on the execution part, when I say execution, I mean redlining, we focus the training on a broader understanding of the business and its risk appetite. And to be honest, that has been one of the frustrations that I've heard again and again and again coming from GCs and senior people in organizations, when it comes to more junior lawyers. It's that they don't they don't have that commercial awareness, as it was called back in my day when I was, at university, and they asked you to do a commercial awareness course so that you could go and demonstrate those skills when you go into an interview. It's just this lack of understanding. And I say, yes, but have you told them what the
Yeah, you're
right?
like criticized, but like,
Yeah.
where have they been exposed to it? I think that's unfair, right? I think it's unfair. I mean, most of the time, I don't know. We expect so much out of junior lawyers, but if you reflect on how we ourselves were trained, right? I didn't get to send a letter to the client until without somebody checking it, until I was like, what, 2 years PQE? I don't know. Maybe it was 1 year. I'm not sure. You basically get locked away because you're you're a bit of an idiot. Well, you're not
Yeah.
really an idiot. You just
Or in
don't
my
have the
opinion.
experience, right? You're not going to have the exposure. If you don't have the exposure, if you can't hear the conversations around commercial, like, because who brings a junior lawyer into a commercial operational chat, then you can't really criticize. I mean, I don't know. I think that's deeply unfair. When people do when people do that, when they go, they just don't get it. They're not commercial. It's like, cool. When would they have been exposed to that? Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. And maybe the training focuses to that, because maybe those GCs who are frustrated with the lack of commercial awareness have been focusing their training on how to draft an indemnity or how to draft a liability cap. But then instead of focusing on that, because the AI can do that for you, you're now focusing on explaining how the business operates, what the risk appetite is of the business, what it means when you cap the indemnity here or the liability. You explain in broader terms what's going on in the business and what it can tolerate, which will then make that junior a better commercial operator rather than a legal executor of red lines.
yeah, completely agree. The question is, I think for me, is how do you do that in the absence of pushback? So I think about how I acquired my sort of commercial operational understanding. I learned, how I learned how to negotiate, how, to get things done, to be able to get things over the line that everybody's a happy bunny with, stuff like that. And it really came out of screwing up, right? Putting in a provision that everybody, like, on the other side or even internally, was like, that's a bit silly. We don't need that. Um, Getting into, a conversation, negotiating with the other side's a lawyer, also their commercial ops person, my commercial ops person, on a call, and actually having a conversation, right? Going, hey, this is the risk if we don't do this. This is what you think, right? And actually having that active, organic, holistic conversation around what this specific opportunity is and does this contract work for it as we go through it. So I think you can set out that risk picture. You can explain from a senior legal position, but until you kind of like shove someone in the room or on the call and go, hey, best of luck, get it done.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think you still really need those conversations. So it's that exposure. And maybe it's also then being willing to drag people into the room, even if they don't need to be there. I mean, that's what you, I mean, I don't want to be like it was better than, but that's what used to happen, right? You would drag junior lawyers, we would get dragged into room, we would get dragged
Yeah.
into meetings. Well, yeah, but like we were told, be quiet, sit
Yeah.
there.
Don't speak, but listen. Yeah.
I mean, we need to drag them in.
Yeah. And maybe if you're not bogged down by millions of red lines that you need to do, you'll
Yeah.
have more time and your senior lawyers will think, well, since the AI did that in 9 seconds, you've got time to now come and get trained properly on what it means to assess risk, what it means to communicate risk to a party who doesn't have a legal background, how you're going to translate these risks into true operational challenges that the other person will understand. And maybe what AI means is, instead of, but these guys aren't building the skills that we had, it's cool. They don't need those skills, actually. They don't need to know how to draft an indemnity. But what they do need to know is how to translate these legal things into business things. And up until now, we didn't really focus on that because we really needed them to do the grind. But now that
Right.
they've
Yeah.
got,
Yeah.
we're going to bring them over here. So does AI mean better lawyers?
I think ultimately, yeah. But also, if you think about like the idea of like drafting and doing the grind, right? When was the last time anybody drafted an indemnity clause from scratch? Purely from scratch, not looking at another precedent, not looking at anything. I mean, that's insane. Like, it was probably, I don't know, like 50 years ago or something, right? You add some words, you tweak it, but nobody drafts a contract from scratch. Like with a blank piece of paper, and they go, the parties, da da da, definitions, right? You use precedents, you pull from a contract and you tweak the words, obviously very legally, that somebody that you liked, somebody else had, or something that you've seen. So, I think it's false to sort of when you hear people, you haven't said that, but when you hear people go, oh, they have to be able to draft a contract from scratch, it's like, that's insane. I wouldn't want anybody to do that. I wouldn't want to do that. And I completely agree that you are freeing up that time, and you are being, that you can bring people into the room. And I think also, let's talk quickly, and it's not necessarily just about, not just our legal industry, but overall, we talk about capitalism, right? We talk about the productivity bit, and we talk about what adding value is. I think the expectation has shifted so much so that we are expected to be so productive in every bit of our day. And the reality is that junior lawyers, a lot of what they had to do, and what the senior lawyers had to do, was get those guys trained, right? So when we talk about all this is being done, and I think about the sheer effort that the partners that I worked with at my firm where I trained at, what they put in to getting lawyers trained and to getting us up to speed and to getting us to be useful members of the profession and the firm, it was enormous. And I'm not sure that we're still aligned to that as a profession. We have a massive responsibility. It's not a burden. It's a responsibility and an obligation to the profession to train junior lawyers. So when we treat it, I think, and with AI and with the speed and with the productivity expectations, when we treat it as something that should be an afterthought, I'm not sure that we're respecting our profession as we should. And
Mm.
I'm hopeful that what AI will do, and what these AI tools will do, is actually allow that refocus, as you said, right? We have all this extra time. We actually do have it. Instead of shoving it into more productivity, what can we do to get people trained? What can we do to invest in getting them to where we think they will add value looking in the future?
Yeah. I mean, we have a responsibility to also train junior lawyers to be able to cope, not just cope, but excel in a world of AI. But the training is now going to shift. And other than explaining what the commercial elements are of a deal, how do you train them to think? How do you train them to do the things that they need to do in a world of AI?
I have no idea. No, how would you do that? I mean, are we the right people to answer that question? So, like, we came up, and Andrew Ollie was the first partner I sat with, who is a fantastic lawyer. He had this little, dictaphone, and he used to sit there and stare, because his thing was to stare while he was dictating. And if you were to ask him at that point, right, in 2005 to 2006, if you were to ask Andrew what the best way to train trainees or people who are coming up in 4 years were in what we knew was going to be the future, with the speed of response and emails and computers and, just everything. If we were going to ask him, he would like pause his dictation device, look at you and be like, and kind of, make a little face and then move on. We're Andrew now. We're the people with the dictation device, right? We're the old people now, kind of. Sorry. I mean, we look great, but we're the old people. And I think the better people to do it are actually people who are like, I don't know, maybe at this point they'd be like 5 to 8 years PQE, right? They've seen it. The AI's always been part of it for them. I think maybe they're the people to ask. I think they're going to know better than we are. They're going to know what they've dealt with. We just see it from this kind of detached, we're hoping to be helpful, we're hoping to develop them, but man, they've got skin in the game. I feel like they're the people to be asking.
I'm going to challenge that, and I'm going to say,
okay, go for it. Do it.
I'm going to say that we're all going to be thrown into this world of AI where reviewing a contract manually will be considered irresponsible. Because if your accountant told you that he was using or she was using an abacus or a pen and paper to do your accounts, or even Excel, you'd be like, you're fired. Because why are you not using
I'm
zero?
hiring the abacus one. I'm hiring. Give me an abacus accountant immediately. That'd be so cool. No, I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. At the same time, I put it to you, the legal profession is like at least looking from an in-house perspective, right? There are some places where I've worked where they are still working abacus style, right? Absolutely. Others where they're working like super fast, super like just they have all the bells, they have all the whistles, they have all the tools, they have all the everything. And in the past, I think especially 18 months, we've got light speed computers. AI is insanely good. Like I mean, even like, sorry, I'm pointing because I have a contract on the other screen. Like I hit a wall doing something where I was running out of time, and I put in I opened my little Law Insider plugin, and I'm like, I need to change this. It was like, yeah, cool. We suggest these changes basically, and they were perfect. And I hit apply, right? But there's a massive spectrum that still exists, and so I think in 3 to 5 years, everybody's going to be light speed. Everybody's going to be super AI, but people are still going on that journey. So we still do have a lot of people rolling with an abacus or rolling with really slow AI tool, like really slow tech, right? Legal tech is not all aligned. If I was looking for the place I am right now, I was looking, and I'm going a little bit off piece, and forgive me for it. But like I was looking at just like talking about tools, I was looking at I had a few different solutions for us because people like now there is no legal budget. There are a million different tools. The implementation has always historically been massively painful. You've got to write this incredibly complex contract playbook. And so that scared off a lot of people from AI, from these tools, right? I think of, 4 or 5 major global brands I've looked at in the past, like 5, 6 years assessed for companies I've worked for. And so when I joined my recent company, I was like, I really don't want an AI tool. I really didn't want one because I just figured it would be such a pain to like implement, to roll out, to do all those things. And until people understand that AI is insanely advanced now, like the Law Insider tool, like you plug it in, you play it, it's done in like a minute. And it's cheap. It is so inexpensive. I mean, cheap is a bad term. Cheap is a great term when you're in house. But until people realize that this light speed exists, they'll still keep playing with the abacus. So for now, I don't think that people are going to have a problem with still doing things the old way for the next 3 to 5 years. So I think we have 3 to 5 years to get people educated and up to speed on what it looks like, but also to build in, to build in the tool, to build the tool in right now to the tech. So yes. I think, yeah. Can you just actually tweak the whole tool that you have, Law Insider has, to build that in? Like,
yes.
I completely agree. It's going to be everybody's problem. But I maintain that I think in terms of training the people coming up, we need to talk to people who are 5 to 8 years PQE because they can tell us about the challenges that they've faced.
Yeah.
I think we should talk about that because a lot of times it's implementation, I think, is an issue. It's understanding. It's because they can make changes, but if I turn around to a junior lawyer who's reviewed a contract and I say, okay, cool, but why? Why'd you do that?
Yeah.
And they go, the AI told me. That's useless.
Not good enough.
That's useless.
Yeah.
Right. It's not good enough. Yeah. Yeah. And what do you think for you? Okay, I'm asking you now. What do you think about the fact that more people in the business, so with AI, you're going to have people like CFOs, contract teams, or not contract teams, CFOs, BD people doing business development, sales guys, and women. They're going to be using these tools, but they're going to need the same training.
Yeah. They're going to need this. I think things will become a more level playing field. So I think having our lanes in the siloed way that we have them now in an organization is going to become much more fluid. I see that happening over the next few years. And if you look at some really innovative teams, like I did a lot of work with a very prominent fintech prior to this role that I have now. And we helped them optimize a lot of their processes. And what we saw from day one with them is that their lawyers were not were not asked to behave like lawyers at all. They were commercial people. They were operational. They fully understood the product, and they had these really holistic profiles. And if you look at other organizations, that's not the profile they hire for. They hire someone who is a lawyer. They've just come from private practice. They're really great at regulation or whatever. But what this fintech did is they really, really trained their people to be very, very commercial and to be partners to the business. And this was before AI completely. It was just a mindset. And I think that whereas up until now, we've got away with not having to do that because you had other teams that plugged the gaps. Now legal will be required to be more than just legal. I think that's going to happen really soon. I'm just talking about the impacts of AI that are broader than the implementation of the tool, because our profession will change fundamentally. The other thing that I foresee is that the CFO and the sales teams and anyone who's interested in revenue will see that legal can become a superpower. Because whereas up until now, the contract was a necessary evil that may take ages because legal is scary, now with AI, they're going to see other teams that are using it to close deals faster, particularly in an in-house environment. So the CFOs and the CROs are going to be demanding that their legal teams are using AI tools to close deals faster because it gives them a competitive advantage. It's not just about risk mitigation. It's about getting stuff done that's going to have an impact on your bottom line. And these are things that we've been talking about for years, but there was no impetus as such. Whereas now with AI, as other organizations start to leverage it to close deals quicker, I think that parts of the business are going to become much more attuned to what legal's doing. And if legal is a blocker or is delaying deals, there is no excuse anymore. But you can't have the excuse of, but look at all these 20, I've got to review 20 contracts today. Cool, but why are you not using AI to make that process quicker? And that question will come. Whereas now maybe lawyers haven't had that level of pressure. I'm not saying that lawyers need extra pressure. They absolutely don't. They are some of the most under-resourced teams in any organizations, and they have a lot of responsibility, to your point earlier. But I think that we're going to be forced to work differently, and AI will be that impetus that we've lacked today.
Yeah. No, and I hear you, and I completely agree. I absolutely agree that that is a direction of travel, and that's where we are right now. I mean, I want to acknowledge that a lot of times when you, as you say, we're under resourced. So half the time when deals aren't getting done because of contracts is because right there just isn't the resourcing. You haven't been resourced well enough to be able to flip contracts that quickly. But actually, the other half of the time is usually because of a disconnect between we're either waiting for information. AI can fix that. If you have whole systems where systems can be input, for instance, you're waiting on a copy of the proposal because you got to make sure that the terms in your contract match the proposal, or you're waiting for, I don't know, company information, things like that, things that actually AI can absolutely plug the gap on. And then obviously there is the other way where there is a block and legal art blocker, and it's because of a fundamental risk issue that needs actually deciding internally or with the customer. For instance, if you hear people, especially in sales, say that the legal are a blocker because like we won't assign the customer all of the background intellectual property, and we won't accept uncapped liability with a strict indemnity clause, right? Like a strict liability clause. Like, yeah, sorry, I'm being a blocker here. Crazy.
Sorry. Yeah.
Sorry, it's ridiculous. I'm so unreasonable. So I mean, that's an internal conversation, but so in terms of speed and resource, yes, going to be great. And especially if the tool itself is well priced. I mean, it used to be the case that if you look back years, it used to be the case that any of these systems were like 10, 50,000 plus implementation, 100. Like you could easily get to 100 depending on the size of your organization. Like now, what? You could do like 35 a month. You could do a couple of hundred. You could do a couple of thousand for your whole organization for an incredible tool that requires no implementation. I mean, that's a game changer. And if you can get AI, and if AI develops in a way where you can pull in that extra information you need, either from readily available information, if your client, your customer is plugged into it also, then you can pull like required information for projects, or if you can pull it from within your own systems, even better. Everything will just be sped up.
Totally, and I see that, and you mentioned implementation earlier, and I
Yeah.
wanted to.
Sorry, I'm so scarred by it.
No,
Like
of course
implementation
you are.
scars all of us.
Everyone is. Everyone is. I've implemented many a CLM in my time, and I'm scarred by it, to be honest, because they were just these monolith, enormous implementations that were sold as more like a point solution. Oh, this is just a little tool for no, it's not. It's an enormous enterprise level implementation that's going to take you a year. And I totally see that now with the more lightweight solutions that are much more, they democratize AI, because when can you get $59 a month product before in legal? It was impossible. But now
No, it didn't exist. Yeah.
that's the access. The access and the ease of implementation are the things that are going to make AI ubiquitous within the legal industry, and the thing that's going to deliver on the transformation promises that we've been hearing for years, because we've been hearing legal's transforming for about 10 years now. But up until a couple of years ago, whenever you went to a legal conference, you heard the same conversations again and again and again. And I went to a conference 2 or 3 years ago, and I thought to myself, I'm just listening to the same panel on repeat for the last decade. What's going on?
So I wrote an article about it in what is it, law.com. I wrote an article about it. I'm covering my mouth because I'm like a little bit like, I think it made me a little persona non grata with a number of conference organizers, where it's just like, what's the point? We're saying the same thing. We're going, legal is a business partner. Cool. We're seeing, how do you transform? How do you add value? How, what are we actually adding? Like what are we actually, like, where is the value? That's why when and I don't go to webinars and I don't go to conferences really anymore. And unless there's like guaranteed champagne, then I'm there. Yes. Like, I'm like, okay, I'm here to discuss.
Fine.
No, but like, I think, so I went to your webinar on building a contract playbook and for AI. And I built 1 million contract playbooks. I built 1 million of them. And I was like, well, it was you who was putting it out. I'm like, I like Electra. I like what you've done. It's pretty. And I'm happy to be building a playbook right now. And I could do a solution, but in my head, I cringe from the implementation, right? Because I'm like going, what are you going to expect out of me? But I was just sort of going, all right, this might be interesting. And then when I went on and I saw the tool itself, I was like, what? It can't be this. No, can't be this easy. No, this is silly. It can't be this easy. And then it is that easy. And then I got the plugin. I did the free version and I started reviewing like a contract with the free version. I'm like, oh, I called my friend who's also a lawyer. She's a great lawyer. And I'm like, hey, she's like, oh my God, we're out of work. And I'm like, immediately, we will no longer have jobs. I mean, we will, but it was that stunning. And I think, and I'm hoping that means that the conversations that we're having in conferences and webinars and things like that are actually going to move beyond it. And I'm hoping what that also means is that those who have dominated the legal tech conversations changes, like that it shifts a bit, because I feel as though, you're talking about Abacus and or Excel spreadsheet. I feel like a lot of, like, Abacus is just like normal computer, but like, I feel like a lot of what we're dealing with right now, in terms of legal tech that exists, is actually that Excel spreadsheet. And we have future tech now. So
yes.
I just kind of need the Excel spreadsheet people to stop
excelling
and implementing.
Yeah.
I'm hoping. So how would you build out a conference around, training lawyers in the age of AI and what the senior end of the profession should be doing? How would you build it out? What would it look like?
Love that question. I think that we are going to become systems designers. So we're going to move away from doing. When I say doing, I mean the actual grind, the execution, the I want to redraft this clause in the way that I like it. And instead, what we're going to have to be really, really good at is instructing the AI to do certain things. But you can't willy-nilly instruct the AI to do certain things. First, you have to design the system in which you want the AI to operate. I think our job is about to get a lot more fun and a
Okay,
lot
cool.
more challenging, because it's harder to shift your mindset from I'm drafting this contract to how does the legal team operate?
Yeah.
Or in a private practice scenario, how should I be operating as an advisor to this client so that I can give them tools that they can then reuse? Because these guys don't just want an opinion, and I won't go into the whole private practice thing because I think it's a whole different space. You
Okay.
know, I think it
Yeah,
is a
yeah,
whole
for sure.
different space, and what people, in-house lawyers, are going to start expecting from their private practice partners. In an in-house environment, I think we're going to have to be much more aware of how the business operates, how legal needs to operate within that system, and then from a legal perspective, how does your legal team need to operate with in the leanest way possible? Because I think leanness is going to feature. It has featured
Oh,
for
it
ages,
will.
and
Yeah.
it will continue to, particularly with AI and the efficiencies that everyone knows can be gained from it. I think lawyers will become systems designers rather than executors, and that requires a mindset shift. And I think that is going to be the deepest transformation our profession has seen since email. So the way we started this conversation was you highlighting the change that you've seen over the last 20 years, which is the speed at which we're demand, at which business demands us to operate, and this obsession with productivity that every second needs to be productive. That was the productivity transformation that we saw that was enabled by technology in a more analog form. But now with AI, where we can delegate jobs to AI agents and AI tools, we're going to be expected to be the architects of those tools. We're going to be the people that integrate those tools into the broader picture. So I think that's how we need to prepare ourselves.
Yeah. I know. I completely agree. I think a lot also needs to be said about control. I
Mm,
think we, in this conference that will come up, and we're talking on architecting and things like that. It also needs to be talked about the fictional conference. It also needs to be talked about how there needs to be a session on make like Elsa, right? We got to learn how to let it go. So we
yeah,
have to create these systems internally, understand it, make them fit for purpose, and then let them go into the
go into
business.
the ether. Yeah,
Go
yes,
to the business.
yeah.
Go, here are your guardrails. I'm here if you need me. Let it go. And because I don't want to say we're control freaks, but
We
we're
can't.
control freaks.
Yeah,
We are control. That's fine. You don't go into law because you like chaos. Actually, I like chaos, but still, you know what I mean. So also, it needs to be also I completely agree. Architecting, building out systems for your entire organization,
yes, yes.
for not for the legal team, for the entire organization as a whole. Bearing in mind you're operating in a global legal ecosystem, so it also has to fit together with your clients
Hmm.
systems that they've set. So they've got to be able to talk to each other, and this common language has to be created, and these expectations, I think, within organizations and globally, that kind of this is the direction we're going, and this is the direction people need to be in. And as you say, it's been democratized, right? The access cost is so much lower, so it's not like you're cutting out people or smaller companies that can't afford it,
Mm,
right? Now anybody can afford, any company can afford these products, and these are space age products.
mm. Yeah,
um so no, yeah, architecting and make like Elsa.
yeah.
Yeah,
I think that's an
yeah.
amazing point. Make like Elsa, because that's exactly what will be expected of us. We're not going to just have our team that does the jobs, right? It's not like the people that report to you are going to be there and you're going to be able to control them and what they do. And therefore, as a result, you're controlling what legal does across the organization. And what's going to be expected of you is to design a system and then push it out so that other people can act more autonomously without you being the bottleneck or the barrier. And when you're needed to put the brakes on more strategic deals, then you do that, or more strategic decisions, then you do that. But when it comes to the day to day, you will be expected to design systems that scale, i.e., don't require you to constantly be pushing the buttons. And I think the other point that you raised, which was really important, is controls, and governance. So it's not just about designing the system, it's about designing those guardrails and the governance that will enable you to maintain the risk tolerance of the business, right? You're going to be able to, you'll know when something needs to be escalated, there'll be clarity. Because at the moment, lawyers in many organizations just rely on them being present or
Yeah.
knowing someone's going to pick up the phone and call them when something's going on, and that will no longer cut it. So that will still happen, of course, but to an extent, you need to build systems that will drive that as a natural behavior rather than you having to micromanage every element of what happens in a business.
Right. Oh no, absolutely. And those sort of flags will be built in. I mean, the way that I feel about generally like how you get notified of risk or issues or things like that, or generally speaking, I think of it kind of like a spider web. And I start getting nervous if I'm not having anything come through, if I'm not feeling vibrations, I'm a bit like, okay, where's the wind? Um, and so it requires so much energy to maintain, to maintain an awareness of what's going on in your organization. But that will obviously still be needed for a lot of what we do because contracts are just a fraction of what we do. But imagine if you could free up that energy of making sure, Bob, great sales guy in Iceland, doesn't like sign away all of your, everything to somebody because he needs to meet his sales quota, right? Something like that. If you don't have to worry about that, because if there is an issue, also, it'll automatically be escalated to you or where it needs to be. You could actually, I don't know, maybe get some other stuff done. We all have really big to do lists, I feel like. Then this is not the most interesting thing that we do.
Reviewing contracts relentlessly
No.
is not why we signed up to do this.
Yeah.
Um,
It could be fun, the negotiation, but like who does it, it can be good, but it's not necessarily right. Where, as you say, it's not why we signed up for it. It's not, where the love of this is.
yeah, I think negotiations will continue. There will always have
Yeah.
to be a human element
Yeah.
where you do speak to the other side. And I was reading a tweet the other day that said that deep fakes are going to blow up and face to face is going to be valued more than anything because people are going to completely start to distrust what they see, digitally, and they're going to want to have more face to face time. So I think that's a really interesting concept. And I wonder whether that will play out in legal as well. When you know that AI is assisting lawyers to negotiate a contract or to redline a contract, at which point do you go, right, now FaceTime becomes a must as part of this?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think that'll happen where I was joking about this. Apparently, there's a dating website where you build out your own AI. Everybody builds their own AI and everything, and then the AIs talk to each other, and then they decide who you're gonna actually go on a date with, who you're gonna match with, and then they have access to your calendar where you think is fine, and they arrange the date. They put it in your calendar, and it's done. So I think of it kind of like that. So I think that's the direction of travel that we're heading from a legal perspective, where I think we're going to we'll build out our playbooks, the other side will build out their playbooks, and the AI will talk to each other, get us to where we need to be, look at our calendars and go, okay, guys, you guys got to go have a conversation now. And
I
like
love
put a Teams invite in and sort of go and probably actually generate an issue list and where we don't agree and
this.
things like that. And then when you jump on the call and you go, hey, our AI said we should talk. Should we get into it? Right? Which I think it'll make it better. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think, yeah, you will have the human element still.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that as a kind of a crystal ball,
Yeah.
a glimpse into the future.
That's my AI. That's my IP. I own that now. It's my idea.
I love that. I'm going to
Yep.
put that on the roadmap, Terra.
Good. Do
Oh,
it. Good. Yeah. As long as I get credit, I'm happy. I credit in 5%. There we go.
credit of 5%. You're in. Terra, it was an absolute pleasure to speak to you. Thank you so much for this conversation. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you. It was absolutely great. And thanks for inviting me to have a chat.
Loved it. I always love talking to you. Do you want to just do a quick plug for your popcorn business?
I will. When I'm not being a lawyer, I make super awesomely tasty popcorn. It's called Dinks. The website is DINKS Popcorn. unpack.com. There's all sorts of interesting flavors, everything from spicy maple pecan to your normal caramel to your very, very fancy nasi lemak, which has a bit of anchovies and peanuts, to, I know it's crazy, to how now fancy bee, which is caramel and chocolate with drizzled chocolate. So yeah, check it out. Buy some.
Tara, please
Buy
bring
some.
me back of that.
I will. I will. There is a discount code for 20% off. It's in your face.
Excellent. I'll put that in the podcast description for anyone who wants to take advantage of that, which I'm sure.
That's brilliant. Yeah. Thank you. And thanks for letting me join. And I really have to say thank you so much for the tool that the Law Insider tool. I'm telling everybody about it just because it really is a game changer. And it's a game changer not just for me, but for my business, which is amazing. It's just fantastic.
That is amazing to hear. So rewarding, and that is what I'm in this for. And I really see the potential for this to change lives, because you're changing a profession, you're changing an industry. So thank you for saying that.
Yeah, no, I say that with so much honesty and appreciation. I don't think I've ever said that about anything ever. The only other, yeah, maybe one or two of my lawyers. That's it.
Wow.
Yeah. No, it's just it's incredible. So 10 out of 10.
Thank you. I really appreciate you saying that. Thank you. I didn't tell Tara to say that, by the way, guys. Just
No. Sorry, no. Like I've been getting a hold of like other GCs I know, and like other really amazing, great lawyers whose judgment I really respect, who I know are great lawyers and great at contract review, and going, hey, can you check this out too? Because I really think it's amazing. So for instance, I was talking to Ruth Stone the other day. She has a firm called Zeigelberger Stone, and this is, she does contract review as part of it, and she's an incredible lawyer. If I need help, that's where I would go. I showed her this tool, and as I said, she was just like, this is amazing. We're going to be out of jobs. I'm like, yes, but also no. And we talked about the junior end of the profession. And I jumped on, I gave her a tutorial. And just like, yeah, because how often is something that is accessible, easy to implement, accurate, it just doesn't come out in our profession. So yes, that is why. And no, I haven't been asked to say that or paid to say that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Very, very grateful for you saying that.
Absolutely.
And yeah, we'll be seeing each other soon. But thank you to all for tuning in. Thank you, Tara, for all your wisdom and insights. And we'll see you all soon. Take care.